In 1914, a fire ignited in Europe, its scorching embers carried by the winds of empire to the heart of West Africa. This wasn't just Europe's war, it was a world war, and Germany's prized colony, Togoland, was about to become its first African casualty. The story of its fall is not merely one of conquest, but of a brutal division that would tear families, cultures, and a nation apart, leaving scars that endure to this day. This is the story of how the Great War carved a line through the soul of a people. Before the first shots were fired, German Togoland was considered a model colony. It was the only German colony that was self-sufficient, a testament to its rich resources and the intricate network of infrastructure the Germans had built, primarily for their own economic benefit. Railways cut through the landscape, connecting the coast to the interior, facilitating the export of palm oil, cocoa, and cotton. For the Togolese people, life under German rule was a complex mix of imposed order and simmering resentment. But the world they knew, with its own delicate balance, was about to be irrevocably shattered. When Britain declared war on Germany in August 1914, the conflict immediately spilled over into their colonial territories. Togoland, nestled between the British Gold Coast to the west and French Dahomey to the east, was in a precarious position. The Allies saw an opportunity, not just to seize German territory, but to neutralize a significant strategic asset, the Kamina radio station near the city of Atakpame. This powerful wireless transmitter was a marvel of its time, connecting Berlin directly with its African colonies and its naval fleet in the South Atlantic. Taking it down was a top priority for the Allies. The invasion began swiftly. On August 6th, French troops crossed the border from Dahomey, and the very next day, British forces marched in from the Gold Coast. The German governor, Hans-Georg von Doering, was caught off guard. He had a small force of German officers and locally recruited African soldiers, the Polizeitruppe. Realizing he was vastly outnumbered and outgunned, von Doering proposed a deal: neutrality. He argued that a war between white men on African soil would undermine the colonial authority they all shared. The Allies refused. The prize was too great. The campaign was short, but brutal. The small German force conducted a strategic retreat northward, hoping to buy time to destroy the Kamina radio station before it fell into Allied hands. The advance was marked by skirmishes, with the Battle of Tra being the most significant engagement. Here, German-led forces put up stiff resistance, inflicting casualties on the advancing Allied troops. But the tide was against them. The weight of the combined British and French armies was overwhelming. The Togolese people were caught in the crossfire, their villages becoming battlegrounds, their lives upended by a conflict they had no part in creating. On August 26, 1914, just 3 weeks after the invasion began, the Germans surrendered, but not before they successfully sabotaged the Kamina radio station, blowing up the 9 massive antenna masts and destroying the equipment. They denied the Allies their primary strategic prize, but they couldn't prevent the fall of the colony. Togoland became the first Allied victory of World War I, a quick and decisive campaign that was celebrated in London and Paris. For the people of Togoland, however, the end of the fighting was not the end of their ordeal. It was just the beginning of a new, more painful chapter. With the Germans gone, Britain and France established a joint military occupation. Immediately, the question of what to do with the territory arose. The two powers, allies in war but rivals in empire, began to eye their respective shares. For the next 5 years, as the Great War raged across Europe and the globe, Togoland existed in a state of limbo, administered by two competing powers. This period was marked by uncertainty and the gradual drawing of new lines on the map, lines that often paid little heed to the ethnic and cultural realities on the ground. The real tragedy was sealed after Germany's ultimate defeat in 1918. At the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, the fate of Germany's colonies was decided. Togoland was officially partitioned. Britain was given a narrow strip of land along the border of its Gold Coast colony, an area that became British Togoland. France received the larger eastern portion, which became French Togoland. These divisions were formalized as League of Nations mandates, a new term for what was, in effect, colonial rule under a different name. This division was a human catastrophe. The new border, arbitrarily drawn by European diplomats thousands of miles away, cut directly through the heartlands of several ethnic groups, most notably the Yu people. Suddenly, families found themselves living in different countries. Villages were split in two. Farms were separated from the markets where their produce was sold. For generations, the Yu had been a unified people with a shared language, culture, and history. Now, an invisible line, enforced by colonial administrators, made them citizens of two different empires, subject to different laws, languages, and systems of governance. The consequences were immediate and profound. Trade routes were disrupted. Free movement, which had been a fact of life for centuries, was now restricted. A brother living in British Togoland needed papers to visit his sister in French Togoland. The partition sowed division and resentment, creating an artificial separation that would fuel political movements and calls for unification for decades to come. The dream of a unified Yu nation was fractured, a casualty of imperial horse trading. The story of Togoland's partition is a powerful example of how the grand strategies of World War I had devastating, real-world consequences for people far from the European front lines. It was a conflict that redrew the map of the world, not just in Europe, but in Africa, creating new borders and new grievances that would shape the continent's future. The fall of Germany's model colony wasn't just a military victory for the Allies. It was the beginning of a long and painful journey for the people of Togoland, a journey of separation and the enduring struggle to overcome a division born of conquest. The echoes of that decision from 1919 still reverberate today, a quiet but persistent reminder of a wound that has never fully healed. What are your thoughts on how colonial-era decisions continue to impact nations today? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing for more hidden histories.